In the heart of a forgotten city, where concrete walls stood cold and indifferent, the rain did not stop. It had been falling for hours. The streets were empty, the air thick with the smell of damp earth and rust. And there, walking barefoot, through the storm, was a little boy named Tafari. He was no more than 9 years old. His skin was the color of deep mahogany, and his clothes were torn from time and dust. Tafari was a poor orphan from Africa who had come to America through pain, not promise. No one waited for him. No one looked for him. He survived on scraps, moving from alley to alley, hiding from cold, hunger, and cruelty. That night, the wind cut through his thin shirt like blades. His feet were soaked, his hands trembled. He had not eaten since the day before. But Tafari was not thinking of food or shelter. His eyes were fixed on something ahead, something small, shivering, and barely breathing. A dog, soaked, weak, and trembling in the rain. Its fur was covered in mud, and one of its legs looked broken. Most people would have walked past. But not Tafari. His heart, though wounded by life, still knew how to care. He slowly approached the animal. The dog did not bark. It only looked at him with tired eyes, as if it had been waiting. Tafari took off his own shirt, soaked and cold, and wrapped it around the dog. He cradled it in his arms like it was something sacred. That night, under a broken roof of an abandoned warehouse, Tafari lit a tiny fire with bits of paper and dry sticks. He held the dog close, whispering soft words it would never understand, and warmed it with his own body. He did not know whose dog it was. He did not care. All he saw was a creature weaker than him. And he knew how that felt, but what Tafari did not know was this. That dog was not just any dog. It was the beloved pet of Langston Cross, a billionaire who had vanished without a trace 3 months ago. The entire country had searched for him. Cameras flashed, detectives investigated, rumors filled the news. But no one had found a clue. Until now. Because wrapped in the torn shirt of a poor African orphan, the dog of a missing billionaire had been found. And without Tafari knowing it, his life, simple, quiet, invisible, was about to be torn open by forces too big, too dangerous, and too powerful to ignore. And while the rain still fell on the cold roof that night, somewhere far away, a phone rang, and a man answered with a whisper. The game had just begun. Morning came, but the sky stayed gray. The rain had stopped, but the streets were still wet and cold. Tafari sat quietly beside the little fire, watching the dog breathe. Its body rose and fell, slowly, gently, like it was dreaming. He had never cared for anything this much. Not because it was a dog, but because it needed him. The dog's fur, once thick and golden, was now damp and dirty. Tafari ran his fingers along its neck to check if it was hurt. That's when he felt something strange beneath the wet fur. A collar. He leaned closer and found a small metal tag attached to it, almost hidden. It was dark and scratched, but still readable. There was a name, not the name of the dog, but a man's name, Langston Cross. Tafari had never heard the name before. He could not read it perfectly, but the letters stood out engraved in silver. He thought it might be the name of the owner. Someone who had lost this dog, someone rich perhaps. Or maybe kind. Maybe they would reward him. Maybe they would take the dog back. Maybe, but then he remembered something. A name he had heard shouted on radios in a passing market. Langston Cross, the billionaire who disappeared. It had meant nothing to him at the time. But now, the same name was here, lying on the dog's collar. Tafari felt a chill run through his back. He had no way of knowing how deep this would go. But something inside told him this was no ordinary situation. He wrapped the dog tighter in the shirt and looked out from the broken warehouse window. People had started walking again, cars passed by. And on a nearby building, a giant screen showed the news. A reporter spoke with urgency. Behind her, there was an image of the same dog, clean, healthy, standing beside a tall man with silver hair. The words at the bottom of the screen read, "New hope in the search for Langston Cross." The dog in the picture was the one lying beside him now. And the man, the billionaire, was missing. Tafari's hands trembled, not with fear, but with something heavier. A weight he could not explain. Why was the dog here, alone, in the rain? Why had no one found it? And why did he, a poor orphan with nothing, end up holding the key to a mystery worth millions? As he watched the screen from a distance, the people around it pointed, gasped, and murmured. No one noticed the small boy hidden in the shadows, clutching a broken dog with the name of a missing king. And in that moment, far across the city, inside a dark office lit by a single lamp, a woman stood from her leather chair. She stared at a photo that had just been sent to her. A blurry image of Tafari in the rain, holding the dog. She whispered one word under her breath. Found. And then she picked up the phone. Something was coming for Tafari, and it had already begun moving. Tafari did not leave the warehouse all day. He stayed hidden, feeding the dog with leftover bread and bits of canned meat he had found in a trash bin. The fire had died out. The cold returned. But something deeper now filled the air. Danger. He could feel it. The dog, once weak and trembling, had begun to stir. Its eyes opened slowly. It looked at Tafari, not with fear, but with recognition, as if it had seen something in him. Something safe. The bond between them grew without words. Both of them had been left behind. Both had survived storms, but beyond the walls of that abandoned shelter, he was no longer alone. Across the city, someone had traced the blurry photo. It had been captured by a street surveillance camera. A boy, a dog, a ruin behind them. The photo had been sent to a woman in black named Evelyn Voss. She was no police officer. She was no friend. She worked for the hidden arm of Langston Cross's empire. She had orders to retrieve anything connected to the billionaire's disappearance, at any cost. And now, all her eyes were on the Orphan. Tafar. I left the warehouse just before sunset. He wrapped the dog in a plastic sheet and carried it in a rusted shopping cart. He didn't know where to go, but he felt he couldn't stay. Something told him the city had started to notice. As he pushed the cart through narrow alleys, he passed by people who didn't care. Men drinking from paper bags. Women arguing over space on the sidewalk. The wind was sharp. The air smelled like oil and loneliness. But in one corner, leaning against a parked black car, stood a man in a long coat. He wasn't wet. He wasn't tired, and his eyes followed Tafari. The boy didn't see him. But the dog did. It lifted its head for the first time since morning and growled softly. Not loud, not violent, but warning. Tafari paused. Something felt wrong. He turned the cart sharply and ducked into an alley. He ran, not fast but careful, pushing the wheels over stones, past dumpsters, through shadows. He didn't know why he was running. Only that. He must. Behind him, the man in the coat spoke into a hidden device. He has the dog. Confirmed. The kid's on foot. Moving north. Orders? No voice replied. Only static. But in a hidden van, parked 3 blocks away, Evelyn Voss smiled as she looked at a screen. It begins now. Back in the alley, Tafari reached an old bus station no longer in use. He hid the cart inside a rusted maintenance shed, wrapped the dog in a blanket of his own making, and sat quietly, heart pounding. He still didn't know the dog's name. Didn't know the people watching. He didn't know how many eyes were now searching for him. But deep in the dog's collar, sewn beneath the tag, was something no one had found. Something Evelyn Voss would kill to keep secret. A small silver key. Tafari did not leave the warehouse all day. He stayed hidden, feeding the dog with leftover bread and bits of canned meat he had found in a trash bin. The fire had died out. The cold returned. But something deeper now filled the air. Danger. He could feel it. The dog, once weak and trembling, had begun to stir. Its eyes opened slowly. It looked at Tafari, not with fear, but with recognition, as if it had seen something in him. Something safe. The bond between them grew without words. Both of them had been left behind. Both had survived storms, but beyond the walls of that abandoned shelter, he was no longer alone. Across the city, someone had traced the blurry photo. It had been captured by a street surveillance camera. A boy, a dog, a ruin behind them. The photo had been sent to a woman in black named Evelyn Voss. She was no police officer. She was no friend. She worked for the hidden arm of Langston Cross's empire. She had orders to retrieve anything connected to the billionaire's disappearance, at any cost. And now, all her eyes were on the Orphan. Tafar. I left the warehouse just before sunset. He wrapped the dog in a plastic sheet and carried it in a rusted shopping cart. He didn't know where to go, but he felt he couldn't stay. Something told him the city had started to notice. As he pushed the cart through narrow alleys, he passed by people who didn't care. Men drinking from paper bags. Women arguing over space on the sidewalk. The wind was sharp. The air smelled like oil and loneliness. But in one corner, leaning against a parked black car, stood a man in a long coat. He wasn't wet. He wasn't tired, and his eyes followed Tafari. The boy didn't see him. But the dog did. It lifted its head for the first time since morning and growled softly. Not loud, not violent, but warning. Tafari paused. Something felt wrong. He turned the cart sharply and ducked into an alley. He ran, not fast but careful, pushing the wheels over stones, past dumpsters, through shadows. He didn't know why he was running. Only that. He must. Behind him, the man in the coat spoke into a hidden device. He has the dog. Confirmed. The kid's on foot. Moving north. Orders? No voice replied. Only static. But in a hidden van, parked 3 blocks away, Evelyn Voss smiled as she looked at a screen. It begins now. Back in the alley, Tafari reached an old bus station no longer in use. He hid the cart inside a rusted maintenance shed, wrapped the dog in a blanket of his own making, and sat quietly, heart pounding. He still didn't know the dog's name. Didn't know the people watching. He didn't know how many eyes were now searching for him. But deep in the dog's collar, sewn beneath the tag, was something no one had found. Something Evelyn Voss would kill to keep secret. A small silver key. Night returned like a quiet shadow, and with it came the whispers of the city. Tafari sat beside the dog, now wrapped in layers of old cloth and plastic. His stomach ached from hunger, but his thoughts were heavier than his body. The name on the collar, Langston Cross, still echoed in his mind like thunder that would not fade. He reached for the collar again, brushing his fingers gently along the fabric. The metal tag was cold. But tonight, something else caught his attention. A loose thread, frayed and dangling. He tugged it carefully, and as it came undone, a small compartment opened on the inside of the collar. Inside, hidden from all eyes, was a tiny silver key. Tafari stared at it in silence. It was smooth, clean, heavy for its size, unlike anything he had seen. He held it in his palm, feeling the weight not just of metal, but of meaning. This key did not belong to a door in his world. It belonged to a world far above his own. He looked at the dog. Its breathing was calm. Its eyes were half open, silent, watching. He didn't know what to do. But he knew one thing. He could not be seen. Not with the key. Not with the dog. Far away, in a hidden room lit by screens and maps, Evelyn Voss studied her team's live tracking. Cameras picked up no clear face, but the shape of the boy, the direction of movement, it was narrowing down. She knew he would hide. The poor always did. She did not know about the key. Not yet, but she knew what Langston Cross was hiding before. He vanished. She had buried files, burned documents, paid off those who asked too many questions. But the key had never been recovered. Back at the broken shed, Tafari dug a hole beneath the floorboards. With his bare hands, he cleared dirt and placed the key inside a small tin can. He covered it carefully and placed a stone above it. He did not know why, but something told him it needed to be hidden. The dog watched every move, quiet, as if guarding. That night, Tafari did not sleep. He sat against the cold wall, legs pulled to his chest, listening to footsteps in the dark. At one point, a sound came, soft, careful. Someone outside. He held his breath. The shed door creaked, slightly. Then, it stopped. Silence. Then footsteps again. Fading. They didn't find him, not yet. But morning would come, and with it Evelyn, and she was not coming to ask. At sunrise, the sky above the city turned gray-blue, but light brought no comfort. Tafari stepped out of the shed with slow, cautious steps. His eyes scanned the street. Quiet, too quiet. He kept the dog wrapped in a tattered blanket and pushed the cart with both hands, heading toward the edge of town. He did not know where he was going, only that he had to keep moving. In a parking lot 2 blocks away, inside a silent black van, Evelyn Voss watched him through a long lens camera. Her eyes were cold, focused. Behind her, a screen displayed maps, signals, routes. She didn't need to chase him yet. She had already surrounded him, but she had underestimated the boy. Tafari knew the cracks of the sidewalks, the broken alleys, the smells of danger. He moved like someone who had been hunted before. He took turns no one took. Hidden shadows most people ignored, but Evelyn had planted something else. A man, a stranger with a kind face, waiting by the market, holding a warm sandwich. He stood beside a rusted trash can. When Tafari walked past, the man smiled gently and offered the food. Tafari paused. His eyes narrowed. He had learned never to trust hands that offered too much. But the dog stared at the man, then growled, just once. That was enough. Tafari. I moved on. The man did not follow, but he spoke quietly into a device in his sleeve. He's heading south. Still got the dog. In the van, Evelyn's eyes didn't blink. She was growing impatient. The boy was smart, but she had time. And more importantly, she had the truth. The one no one else knew, Langston Cross, hadn't simply disappeared. He had run, and he had left everything behind, except the key. Tafari stopped under a bridge, beneath layers of metal and stone. He found an old box and made a bed for the dog. He sat beside it, knees pulled close, mind racing. His world was changing fast. Too fast, but he still had the key, hidden, safe. And though he didn't know what it opened, something inside him whispered that it mattered, that it was the reason. People were looking for him. Not the dog. Not even the billionaire. But the small silver key. Suddenly, a loud noise echoed through the space above. A van. Black, heavy, its tires screeched. Tafari grabbed the dog and ran, heart pounding, not knowing where to go. But someone had already seen him. From the van door, a figure stepped out in silence. Evelyn. And in her hand was a photo of Tafari, printed in red ink. Tafari ran. His feet splashed through shallow puddles and slipped on broken pavement. The dog pressed close to his chest, breathing hard, but silent. Behind him, tires rolled slow and steady. Not fast, not loud. But closing in, he darted into A forgotten tunnel that led beneath an old rail line. The air smelled of rust and wet stone. The walls were stained with time. Light flickered above barely enough to see. But Tafari had lived in darkness before. He trusted shadows more than people. He didn't stop until he reached the far end of the tunnel, where a thick metal door stood bolted to the wall, the kind no child could open. But he knew what was buried beneath his shed. And now he knew why. The key felt different. He had to go back. Somehow. Far above. Inside her van, Evelyn Vos tapped her fingers on the armrest. Her face was calm, but her voice carried steel. Hold position. Do not lose the boy, but don't touch him until I say. She already knew where he would return. The poor don't wander. They return to what's familiar, what they think is safe. She smiled. She had waited months for this. Ever since Langston Cross vanished, her team had searched for traces. They found blood. They found lies. But never the key. Until now. Back in the tunnel, Tafari climbed a ladder out through a drain and emerged in a quiet back alley. He pushed forward, feet sore, lungs burning. His only thought, get to the shed. Get the key. He didn't see the eyes. In the alley. Watching. He didn't see the silent camera perched above the dumpster. Recording. He arrived at the shed just after dark. The door was untouched. He slipped inside, knees shaking. The dog limped in beside him, then curled into the corner without a sound. Tafari went to the place he remembered, the floorboard. He pulled it up. The tin can was still there. And inside it, cold and perfect, the silver key. He held it tight, then looked at the dog. In that moment, the dog stood. It limped forward, tail low, and stopped in front of a cracked concrete wall near the back of the shed. The same spot it had stared at once before. Tafari followed. He touched the wall. It felt hollow. He scraped at the corner with a stone. The edge cracked. Behind it, hidden in the darkness, was a narrow slit in the wall, just wide enough for the key. Tafari. I inserted it slowly. It clicked. And the ground beneath him shifted. A section of the shed's floor gave way, revealing a hidden stairway that led down into darkness. Cold air rose from below. Tafari looked down, then back at the dog. He had no choice. He stepped inside and began to descend, step by step. Into the world Langston Cross had buried, into the vault beneath the earth. Far above, Evelyn Vos stared at her monitor as the screen blinked. The boy had vanished, but the signal remained. He had entered the vault. And he wasn't alone. The stairs groaned under Tafari's feet. Each step down felt colder, heavier, as if the air itself resisted his presence. The walls were carved stone, untouched by sunlight. He held the silver key in his hand, though he no longer needed it. The door had already opened behind him and closed. At the bottom, a long corridor stretched forward, lined with flickering lights that turned on by themselves, one after another. The dog followed closely, its breathing steady, as if it knew this place. They passed old doors sealed shut, thick vaults of steel with faded labels, unreadable codes. At the end of the corridor, a final door stood, taller than the rest, surrounded by silence. Tafari approached and placed his hand on it. It opened. Inside was a room unlike anything he had ever seen. Tall glass panels lined the walls, glowing with blue light. In the center stood a pedestal, and on it a small black box. No riches. No gold. Only this. Tafari stepped closer. On the box was a note, written in small, careful letters. To the one who finds this, know the truth. Tafari opened the box. Inside, a recording device flickered to life. The screen showed a face. Langston Cross. Alive. His voice was calm, but there was sorrow in it. He spoke of betrayal, of people in his company who had planned to silence him, of secrets buried beneath layers of wealth, of his decision to disappear before they could reach him. He had left everything behind except the key, and the dog, his most loyal companion. He spoke of choosing to hide this message where only someone with nothing would look. Someone who would care for a dying animal in the rain. Someone forgotten, like he had once been. Tafar I watched the screen until it faded. The truth had been passed. Behind him, the dog sat still watching, but the moment shattered. A sound echoed down the tunnel. Footsteps. Then voices. Evelyn. She had found the vault. Tafar I looked around, heart racing. He grabbed the box and backed away, searching for another exit, but there was none. The dog stood between him and the door, growling low, teeth bare. The light dimmed, the walls hummed, and as Evelyn's shadow stretched into the room, the floor beneath Tafari shifted once again. A second passage opened, one not meant for power, but for escape. He ran. Carrying not just a message, but the final voice of a man the world had tried to erase. And behind him, the walls closed. Evelyn arrived seconds too late. Only the dog remained, but not for long, because in the distance, a train had started to move, and inside it was Tafari. Carrying the truth and heading into the unknown.